What's going on, guys? Hit pause here. I'm here to bring you guys the actual summary of that lock-on tutorial. It was never actually completed, and the reason was because the tutorial itself got corrupted. There were two more parts that were full length, but I don't know what happened. You know, it's shadow play. It just the sound got all gorky, and then even the graphics got all pixely and weird. So, and this is actually like the fifth time I've tried to record this, but I keep getting interrupted by dumb shit. And part of the reason for that is because Shadowplay cannot pause. So if something happens, the dogs go crazy, or somebody comes home or something stupid, then I basically have to scrap the recording. So hopefully I'm going to try to get through this as quick as possible. So what I'm going to do here is basically, and I'm out of breath because I've been running around doing the grocery stuff. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to demo it. And this guy right here is actually going to die automatically, and the reason for that is because right here after 5 seconds of begin play it is going to destroy him. And the reason that I wanted to do that was because I needed to make sure that if something happened that wasn't in my control, which obviously it isn't my control, but if the game decides that a character that I'm locked on is dead, which would be either, you know, he got hit in the head with a brick, or another player killed him, or a monster killed him, or an event killed him, anything killed him, I want to make sure that my code doesn't break and I don't get stuck in some kind of thing where I got a floating lock-on target, or I can't lock on anybody else anymore, or something weird like that. So I did that to make sure that everything would be safe. So just in summary here, I will target him and wait until he dies. Okay, now if I hit F one more time, I'm still good here to lock on. Okay, I can cycle through them. I also have a key here to kill them, so if I hit G, they die. If I hit F and G and then F, okay, and I don't have to hit F twice. It doesn't get like stuck in some kind of weird thing or anything like that. He will die, and boom, and now they're all dead. So oh, the other thing that does happen is that if I say lock onto this guy and I move too far away, it goes away. Then I have to lock on again. Okay. So if I move too far away, if I try to look away and I lock on, I get nothing. Okay, if I have one locked on and then I look away and I hit F, it goes away. Okay, so it'd be kind of a quick way to clear your lock-on target. You could actually have like a completely separate key, or you could say, hey, if I hold it down, then it goes away, or something like that. You could maybe, you know, if you use like wheel mouse or something, could do the scrolling, and then like F or E or whatever button or tab or whatever you wanted, could turn it off and on. You know, there's I've seen it handled a zillion different ways. So in this case, and also just excuse me, a note here, I'm not actually really doing anything with the lock-on. The one thing I do have though is I do have him stored in a variable. So if I hit G, boom, he's dead. Okay, that's just a key I added. If I hit G, he dies. If I hit G, he dies. And nothing breaks if they die, or if I move too far away or something like that. But what I would probably do in the end is, once you're locked on, it would kind of lock your camera onto him, or it would make sure all your shots go straight to him if you're shooting magic missiles or whatever you were doing. So, all right, let's take a look at what we're doing here. Okay, so here's the whole thing. It's not very big. It's not very complicated. It's not really all that weird. Here's when I press G. I basically check if my lock-on target is valid. If it is, I destroy it. I make sure I remove it from my list of targets, and then I clear my target variable. Okay, that's when I hit G. When I first hit the button, this is right here, lock on, I do have an input in my edit project settings here. Under input, I have an action mapping of lock on, and I have it set to F. Okay, G is not an action here, it's just a temporary thing that you can say here. You can just right click and just say, hey, you know, Z, you know, what happens when I hit the Z button, you know, you just type it out. Okay, so the first thing we do is we reset a variable that is our distance check, because we do this by closest distance. Now in this case, because I'm actually cycling through all of my lock-on targets, this is actually pointless, but it's here just in case. And this is actually the original way that I was doing it. I was trying to lock onto the closest target to me. You could have other criteria, which one's closer to the middle of the screen, which one's the biggest threat, which one has the least hit points. I mean, you could even give them options, you know, players in the options menu, of how they want to to decide who gets locked on first. You know, I mean, I've seen that before. You know, hey, just give me the closest enemy, give me the weakest enemy, give me the strongest enemy, give me, you know, and you could easily figure all that out by getting the variables from the monsters and stuff like that. So in this case, I just have this, but I don't exactly use it. But it was set to 1,000 here. And then this would be set to reset to 1,000 every time you hit it, because you want to make sure that you cycle from farthest to closest as you go through. So then we do a sequence, and that's the first thing I do is actually this pre-filter lock on. But this is right here, and what I'll do is I will just show you the whole thing for a second. You can pause it. I will come back and explain it, but excuse me, I'm not going to explain it right now because it was not the first thing that I actually added. This was added later to make sure that it still works. So I did it here. The first thing that I actually created was this. So this is our trace. So we want to trace from our camera angle here. And that depends on, you know, how you want to do it. But basically, whoever you're tracing from would be pretty much like right here, okay, where you would define that as your end point here, or your you know, your start point. So I get my own follow camera, okay, from self. I get follow camera. I get its rotation. I break that open, and I get the yaw, and then I figure out the forward vector of the yaw, okay. And then what I do is I multiply that by 750, because remember, the forward vector of a yaw is basically like a normalized vector, so I should end up with 0, 1, 0. So then I multiply that by 750. I should get 0, 750, 0. Okay, then I add that to my actor's location, so in that direction, and remember it's yaw, so that gets projected out into world space. Okay, so then I add that here, and that's the end. So basically I'm tracing from me to 750 units out in front of my camera. Okay, only straight ahead along the horizontal of the ground. Okay, because remember, I've wiped out the pitch and the roll here. Actors to ignore. This isn't actually necessary, but if you were calling this from your player controller, you would want to put the controlled pawn in here to make sure that that doesn't block the trace. Okay, ignore self is actually the exact same thing in this case, but like I said, if some other entity was calling it, you would want to make sure that whatever you were tracing from wasn't going to block the trace. Okay, and the only thing I'm tracing here is pawn. Now this is actually a really handy way to do this. A lot of time, like when I first got the engine, I kept making an array over here, trying to figure it out. But you can actually just drop this down and say make array, and when you make array, you can actually here, if I do this, you can tell it what it'll feed it what you can pick. So you can say, hey, you know, I want to trace against world static, and then I want to trace against world dynamic, and I want to trace against pawns, or yeah, pawns here. And doing something like this would make this would be like a line of sight check. Although if you were doing that, I would do a line trace, not a sphere trace. But in this case, I'm only doing basically a blanket search for pawns. Okay, and then I come out here and I run a sequence. Okay, the first thing I want to do is I want to see, did I hit anything? Okay, boom. This is a return value. This will come true if something was hit, false if not. Okay, so it's an easy way to branch out to base. So basically, if this didn't do anything, use this pin right here in a branch to drive your code after the fact. Okay, so ignore this for now. This is just going to tell us what's going to happen next. So then what I do is, okay, so I hit something. That means that this array has some values, right? There's at least one thing in here. So I want to do a for each here. I want to break it, okay? I want to get the hit actor. I want to make sure it's valid. This actually shouldn't be necessary, but there are times when a trace can fire off, and in between that tick it happens to be the exact moment when that character gets killed or destroyed or changed in somehow. So these are safety nets. I suggest using them in anywhere you can stomach. And then I try to cast it to my character. Now in this case, the reason that I'm doing that is because they're all basically me. They're all basically copies of me. They're all using the same. In fact, they are just my character. I just drug them out. You can see they've got their cameras and everything. What you would want to do for the most part is basically say probably cast to character. If this is like a whole bunch of different types of AI enemies or something like that, and you want to be able to say, hey, all the dragons, all the demons, all the orcs and gnolls and all that stuff, I want to make sure that I get them all. Whatever the parent master class of all of those things are, would be what you want to cast to here. Now, if it goes so far back that some of them are literally just static objects, you know, and then, you know, you want to be able to lock onto those as well, you probably want to skip this, okay? Then I check my distance, okay? Now, and basically what I'm doing, this is just a simple pre-filter check. Is everything, is it going to be, the distance here going to be less than my max lock-on range? Now this is basically a static variable, it never changes, and it's set to 1000. Now the reason that I came up with 1000 here was because in my trace, my sphere radius is a radius of 250. Okay, that's the radius, remember, and I trace out to 750, so these two combined is 1000. So it doesn't really matter if I did this, if I do this any farther than 1000, any higher than 1000, it's not going to do me any good because I'm only tracing out to 1000 anyway. Okay, so I check if it's less than that, remember, less than here, if that's true, then what I do is I check my lock target list. Okay, my lock target list, I just want to make sure, does this object contain this element already? If not, add this element to this list. So the first thing I do is I just do a simple, do the trace, right? Then after that I do a simple pre-filter. Just does every single element that I hit here fit within this first criteria, and that criteria happens to be, is it within 1000 units of me? Okay. Then I come here and I basically check, did I get anything coming out of this list? Okay, if it should basically not go to this point if I don't, for the most part, but things can happen where you trace something and then you traced it right as you were running past that 1000 mark and then you ran out of that, you know. But in this case we're just saying, okay, if the length of my target list, this is where I store all of the ones that I'm going to sort through, if that is greater than 0, which means it's not empty, then we move forward. Okay, and once we are moving forward, we start our sequence here. So the first thing we do is we check. This here is a delta look at check. Now I condensed it down by basically taking my nodes and just saying collapse nodes, and that's what this is here. So you can double click it, you can come here. Now I already detailed what this does in another video, but I'll just show you here. Basically what I'm doing is I am checking the angle between my camera and the actor that I'm checking against, okay, finding look at rotation, getting the angle between those two rotations, which is delta, and I want to make sure that that is both the pitch and the yaw are less than my max lock on angle here, which happens to be, I believe, 40. Yes, it's 40 here. So as long as both of those are true, it will return, no matter what I get here, it will return that Boolean value out of here. Okay, so I click right here. So the item that I'm checking is going to be the current index. Okay, now current index starts at 0. Okay, when I go through all of this code, current index gets added to 1 each time. Now this is going to be completely different code. This is, you notice that I am using the closest distance here, but it's not really that important because I'm going to end up cycling through them anyway. Now what I'm using here is actually a modulo, and what a modulo does is basically it takes an input, A, and it compares it against B, and once it equals B, it sets this back to the start, which would be 0. Okay, so you can think of it as almost a ratio. This is like A out of B. So if A gets, so you know, 10 out of 10. If I'm at 10 out of 10, I'm done. So I'd never actually hit 10 out of 10. So that's the important note here. I did a check on that. If your second value here is 10, you will only get values between 0 and 9. It will never hit 10. Okay. Once it does hit 10, it will automatically reset it. It doesn't wait till it goes past it. It waits until it hits it. Just try to remember that, and you can always test it. So I'm modulating against the length of the list as I come into this part here. So I do it here too because it's important, because what happens is if I have 3 characters and when I hit F or G, I just killed it down to 2. My current index might be 3 or 2, right? So the next time I come through here, it's going to add 1 to that. If I don't modulo against the length, if it's higher than or equal to that length, I'll actually get a null value here, because if that character has been killed, it'll come back and it'll be like access none. There's no entry in this array because I only have 2 elements and I'm trying to get index 2, which is actually the third item. Because remember, 0, 1, and 2, it's a 0-based index. So that's why this is important to do right here. Okay, so we get this current index here, which remember the first time through it starts at 0, and then from then on perpetually it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3 as long as the length is here. And at any moment if that length gets shortened because 2 characters were killed, it will automatically align itself here to be, say, 0 and 1, 0 and 1 from now on. It'll just ping pong. Okay, so we do that check against that object, okay, because this is the input object here. Is it within my camera view? Okay, if so, I'm going to check the distance now, and this basically cycles through every object and it will return the one that is closest to me. And it's very simple. This is old school logic here. Basically we say, hey, if the distance to the actor that I'm checking is lower than my closest distance variable, if that is true, false goes nowhere, set my variable to that distance. Okay, so that is my new check, and also set my target because he's the closest right now. Then I go through and I check a new character. Same thing. If it's closer now, because remember, say the first character I checked was 850 units. This is now my check. This is now 850. He's also my target. If all of the rest of the characters are all farther away than 850, that's my final result. End of story. Lock on target. But if any one of them is, say, 500 units, this gets set and that gets set to my new target. And that is why when I first click here, when I first hit anything, I reset that distance. Okay, so we go through, boom, 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 boom. Now remember, this doesn't officially work really because I'm cycling. I'm also just going through the indexes here. So after that's done, I add the index, remember, modulo it against the length. Okay, so I go +1 here, modulo, and I set it. Okay, then I check if this is valid. Okay, because if, remember, I could still check through all of these things and none of them were in my delta look at check. If they're not within my delta look at check, I don't do anything because there's nothing in here, right? So this is all set to, because remember, if it fails the look at check, it gets set to none right here. Okay, so if nothing happens, boom, we're basically done here. But if it is valid, then go ahead and turn on the target reticule, and that's what this is here. Okay, it's just it's a material billboard here, and basically I set it to hidden or not hidden, and that's it. So that's all we do to actually do the work. Now the next important thing is the pre-filter here, which does happen right here. Okay, this is extremely important. If I compile here, get rid of all those errors. I really wish they'd fix that, but it doesn't really hurt anything. Basically what I'm doing here is I'm using a temp array to organize my lock target list because it's kind of hard to explain, but you cannot remove elements from an array through a for loop. It doesn't work, and I'll show you why here. I don't think I can do a reroute node. Well, okay, I can. I'll show you why. It's kind of difficult to explain. I'll try my best to explain this. It makes sense. So you guys will see why I do this. So what I've got, and do it like this. It's hard to work with this. Just give me the little guy. There we go. Thank you. This is why you cannot remove a object or objects from a an array in a for loop. It doesn't work. So this is going to be 1, or actually, sorry, this is going to be 0. This is going to be 1. This is going to be 2. And this is going to be 3. Okay. So when you do a for each loop, basically what it does is it does it by index. Okay, it doesn't do it any other way. So it says, okay, so the first thing it does when you fire this, it says, okay, so I'm doing a for loop here. I'm first going to store how many objects I have in here. In this case, I have 4. So I'm going to index from 0 to 3. Now, if all I did here was on loop body was remove this from the array, what would happen is index 0 would come here and it would say remove this. Okay, I'm just going to put it inside here. Alright, but then what happens is, because that happens, this gets moved. Okay, because this has to become 0. Remember, this just goes by index, so the next thing it's going to do is look for index 1. So it's going to remove this. This is going to get shifted over here. This is going to look for index 2. There's nothing here. This is going to look for index 3. There's nothing here. Okay? It doesn't matter if you do it by object or by index. It still works out. You still have 2 left. You can only remove half of an array if you do a for loop and say, hey, remove all of these items. It will not, it doesn't say, okay, let me store each item and make sure they all get removed. It just goes by index. That's why we do a temp array here. So the first thing I do is I clear it, which basically empties it out. This array now has 0 elements in it. I do a bunch of checks. If they pass my checks, I add these things to my temp array. Okay, I'm just going to skip the checks for now. This is the basic point of it. We do a bunch of checks. We filter everything. If it passes, we add that to the temp array. When we are done, we set our real array to our temp array. So we replace it. Okay? The next time we hit the button, it clears that again. Okay? So that's the basic point of using a temp array as opposed to trying to filter the actual array itself. This is an old method of doing it, I think, but it's very reliable. Okay? Again, clear the array, go through everything and check. If it passes the checks, whatever, you know, the reasons to keep the item in that's in the array, add that to your temp array. Then at the end, just swap them, basically. Make this equal to this. This is a hard switch, basically. Okay, lock target list becomes temp array. Doesn't matter what was in here. Okay, this will override it. This is basically a complete override. So the actual checks that I'm doing, get rid of this now. The actual checks that I'm doing are basically, is the item still valid? So if it was destroyed, it's not valid anymore. Okay, this is very, very important right here. Compile that. Okay. Afterwards, we're going to set its lock-on target, remember the billboard component here, to hidden. And so what's going to essentially happen is every time I hit the button, it's going to set them all to hidden. It's going to go through the entire list and set them all to hidden. At the end, afterwards, then it goes through and checks everything and only sets the one that isn't hidden, or is my final result back to showing. Then I check again, are they within my max lock-on range? This right here is the reason that this, when I run away, actually no, that's not the reason that that happens yet. I should show you guys that. If I hit the button, that happens. Okay, but if I've moved too far away and I hit the button, then it happens. Okay, I can't lock on it. That's why that happens. That happens right here. Okay, if not, okay, we get the distance too. As long as it's less than my max lock-on range again, which is going to stay at 1,000. That'll never change. Don't add it to the array. It didn't pass the check, so don't add it to my temp array. If it did pass the check, it's valid and it's within distance, go ahead and add it. Okay, that's all I do here. Once it's done, again, remember, overwrite the real one. Make sure that the length, okay, because remember, every item could fail, right? If every item has failed, we basically go nowhere. Okay, if it is greater than 1, that means at least one of them passed the check. Now start running this check lock on timer. Okay, which is here. And the reason I do this, so basically this is looping every 2 seconds. Okay, this is just kind of like a background less important check that just says, okay, well, check is my target valid still. Okay, check if it's still within distance. Okay, if not, hide its reticule, and then clear it from my item, and then remove it from my array. Okay, you see that here. Remove it from my array. Go ahead and reset my closest distance, and then clear the timer. Because remember, when I'm doing this check, I only have one object that I'm worried about. That's my actual lock-on target. Okay, remember that finalizes right here. Sets lock-on target there after all of this stuff. Okay, So this is the only thing I'm really worried about, is the one lock on target. But the things that I want to do to it, if it becomes invalid at any point, is to clear it from my variable so that I don't have anything, and get it out of my array so I don't keep checking against it, and then clear the timer. I'm done. Okay, I'm not going to ever do anything again and worry about anything again until the player hits the F button. Okay, once this runs through and clears everything out, if at any point it fails. So this timer could be a little bit slower. It could be 5 seconds if you wanted to. It could be faster, I think, but I don't really think it needs to be very fast, because it's just something that you want to, you know, kind of check to see. You know, it's not something that you're like paranoid about, that you need to check all the time, right? Hey, you go too far, just wait a couple seconds and get rid of it. It doesn't really matter. Player's not going to freak out. Now let me double check that's working, because it didn't seem like it was working for a second. So I'm not going to hit any buttons. I'm just going to run too far away. Okay, so what I'm going to do is it's not working, so let's go ahead and pause here. Let's turn on debug, and let's frame skip. I hate that. I wish it didn't do that. Alright, let's start playing. I might be on the wrong thing. Simulating. Okay. So the first time I think I have an issue. The reason that I have an issue is because the first time that I go through this bad boy, I run the pre-filter check before anything, and I don't have a target yet. I do not have a target yet. So what I need to do is, if I am successful all the way at the end here, I need to run this down here. And I think what I'm going to do, I'm not sure this is going to be correct, but I think I want to do a do once here and never reset that. This might work. Okay, so the do once made it so the first time I hit the button I didn't get an actual lock on here. Let's try skipping that. Okay, now I can't lock onto them at all. So that's not correct. That's not correct. Okay, so after we do the pre-filter lock on, we check our... We should end up with a lock on target. Okay, I'm going to kill that, and I'm going to see what happens if I do the second target. So there's the first one, there's the second one, there's the third one. Yeah, see, now it works. If I run away, it works. But the first time, it doesn't work. So I don't like that, and I'm not really sure what to do about that. And I don't know if I should address that, because I wanted to keep this video kind of short. So basically, why is this... So we do the pre-filter, everything should be blank when I'm done. Oh, you know what it is? I think I just want to do this. I think I just want to do this. Not the full pre-filter. And I think I really do need to just do the do once. That shouldn't break anything. That shouldn't break anything. Because I only care about this the very first time I hit the button. And I never need to reset it again. Okay, F worked, and if I move away, there we go. That was the fix. So F, move away, boom. So that's never going to happen again. And then we go away here, and boom. Because like I said, the pre-filter will fail the first time I hit the button. it will fail because it's completely empty. Okay, remember, because it happens before everything. Okay, so basically I want to start running this check the moment that this happens. After this point, the pre-filter will never fail again. Okay, so do the once here for the timer. Hopefully that makes sense why that happened. So that's basically it. That's how the whole thing works. And like I said, you can run more checks. You could simplify it, I think, a little bit just by saying, hey, only worry about the character that's, you know, at any moment. Don't worry about storing it. Don't worry about cycling through them. Because remember, I wanted to be able to cycle through them. I felt that would work, that the players be able to kind of do this, you know. Now remember, see how it only cycles through these two? It's because these guys are the only ones that are passing my visibility check until I get this guy a little bit closer. Okay, so it doesn't try to get the guy. Okay, it's actually cycling through to nothing here, which is actually kind of desirable. But in this case, it's going through to all three of them, and again, I can just get rid of them all like that. We'll look at it one more time so you can pause. That's how I'm killing them. Pause. That's where I start. Pause. Here's my sphere trace. Pause. Here is, I don't know if you guys want to pause this. Here is my filtering of the sphere trace. You should be able to pause that there. Here is my actual, move this, get a little bit more room here. Here's my actual cycling. Okay, cycle through the current list and set the target. Okay. Here is my pre-filter check. Okay. Here is the constant check that I'm going to run while I have a lock-on target. Just checking distance, just checking validity. Is it still alive? Is it still within range? At any moment, if you know, every 2 seconds, check that. If it fails, wipe it out, get it up, get my timer cleared. And again, the last thing I had to do was run that on the first check as well, because I never did actually run that on the first time through. Okay, here is that delta look at graph here. Okay, this is that check here. Okay, remember, don't go to here to try to get out of here. It's kind of weird. It kind of puts you in here, so it's right on this track here. Okay, all this stuff up here, by the way, that's just default 3-player stuff. You'll get that if you just start the project. Start a third-person project view. So that's it. That's everything in a nutshell, and that's it working. Again, if you have any questions, let me know, or issues, or if you couldn't follow along or something, let me know. Or if you need to know, you know, anything more specific, I'll see what I can do to help. But Hip signing off. Thanks for watching. Happy New Year and Merry Christmas and all that. And thanks for the support, guys.